Okay.
I think we're live.
It's not going live yet. Okay.
Yeah, I've got it reading live on my end. It's red and counting down.
Guest destination, guest stream was still. It says yours was deleted on YouTube. Britt?
Yeah, I had some sort of issue on mine, but I think overall we're good. So
okay.
there was
some sort of issue on mine, but I think overall.
Okay, I think we're live. Okay, guys. Okay, I think we're okay now. Sorry about that, everybody. This is John Haller. Welcome to tonight's Prophecy Roundtable. And I have some feedback here. I'm trying to figure out where it's coming from. But anyway, welcome you to our tonight's Prophecy Roundtable. Right now I have Patrick Wood, Britt Gillette, and David Bowen with me. Scott Townsend will be joining in a moment. So we're going to talk about some different tech issues tonight. If I nod off, it's okay. I've just got back from Israel yesterday. I've been there most of the last month, and so it feels like it's 2 or 3 in the morning to me right now. So Scott Townsend has now joined us. So
hey guys,
we're live and we're going. So I don't really know, Patrick. Where do you think we should start tonight?
Wow.
No pressure.
No pressure. Yeah. Well, one thing that's on people's minds is their utility bills. That's a lot of people are grousing that their utility bills are just going through the roof. I don't know how yours is there, but some people are saying their utility bill is doubled or worse in the last 3 months. This is very disturbing because people are getting so pinched in their budget already. Can't afford it. But
yeah, ours has gone up quite a bit. I don't know about you guys. We have a lot of data centers here in the Columbus area. You know, it's pretty. I mean, Meta just announced that they're building a data center here locally. They've already spent billions of dollars in construction, and that's one thing I find interesting is the amount of money that they're investing in these data centers everywhere. I mean, what are your experience with data centers near you?
they're all over Mesa, Arizona right now, and Phoenix too, but Mesa has a bunch of them.
We get the chip factories going in as well too, and the chip factories also taking up a lot of resources.
Yes.
Scott, do you have them out where you are? Or
we have pistachios, walnuts, almonds, citrus. So no, we don't have an impact.
Okay, so you live in the land of nuts, but
I do, absolutely. Yeah.
So
not Marin County. Okay.
Yeah. So here in Columbus, just to give you an example, as of about a year ago, Amazon had invested about $19 billion in server data centers and warehouses, like trucking warehouses, the largest trucking warehouses I've ever seen, at least 2 of them. Google had spent in excess of $10 billion of construction. Meta was about $6 to $8 billion. And then some companies said they're going to build put $2 billion of construction in. And then we also had an Intel plant that was going in. I don't know what the status of that is, which was at least the initial phase was $25 billion up to $100 billion just in construction costs. And that's led to a lot of construction congestion in certain, there's a town called Johnstown near here, and everybody's really upset. And utility bills have really, I think it would be safe to say that they've almost doubled. So I know there's a lot of things that the companies are doing. What are they doing, and how do you think, what's the solution to the power problem and the needs that they have?
Well, for one thing, I'll just jump in here. For one thing, these mega data centers, they're getting the idea now, and not just independently, but the cities where they want to locate, they're forcing them to supply their own power. And they're saying, you can't take power away from our grid. If you want power to run your data center, you're going to have to provide it yourself. So they're exploring gas turbines, for instance. Nuclear is going to be a big thing for sure if they can build it fast enough. But there's new technology for many nuclear plants that probably is going to be acceptable for some of these companies. And believe it or not, in some cases, they're using solar as a source of energy as well. Go figure. But I think this is going to be a trend when they get enough public feedback that any data center that goes in somebody that's like a big one, they're going to say, this is the deal. You want to live here, you're going to have to provide your own power. Then the next thing on the list is water. Water is a big thing. So you can't manufacture that. So they're going to have to work out a deal with the city or whoever, the county, to get water. But it's interesting to me that there's something going on here as well. The utilities around the country are using this as an excuse to jack rates on customers. We've seen this in Arizona already. And I'm thoroughly convinced that somebody had got the idea, we have the perfect storm here to gouge the customers any way that we want at this point. And I think that's part of the issue, that they're saying, well, your rates are going to go up 20% a month or 10%, whatever, and maybe do it, 5 times a year. Who's going to figure, except when you look at your bill at the end, oh my gosh, it's double whatever it was a year ago. So that's another factor I think we should also consider here. But definitely the data centers themselves have made a huge drain on our national resources of energy.
Okay, I have a couple questions to ask you, but once some of you other guys weigh in on this issue right now, because I think this is really one of the big issues.
Well, I don't know how far or to transition, how far to go. Britt would probably have more insight with this, but the question I keep hearing is, will these data centers really ever be finished and get to their full production? Because when you look at the AI and the circular deals that are happening and the money the way they're handling money, will they be able to afford things like this will the plans that they have ever come to fruition? Again, I think Britt will have a better feel and understanding than I would on that, but it's a question I'm hearing quite often.
Yeah, I would agree. I think is this stuff ever really going to come to fruition? Just a quick note. I had some issues with the streaming on my YouTube channel, but I think that's fixed now. So, but under current projections, OpenAI, in order to reach the computing power they say they'll have over the next 5 years, they have to spend $1 trillion.
Right.
So there's 2 bottleneck problems with the AI issues. One is the power needs. That's a big bottleneck right now. But even if the power needs, that capacity can be achieved, is the cash there to pay for it?
Right.
And as David was just saying, there's issues with what is the return on investment for this? What is the revenue that's coming in OpenAI and some of these other companies relative to the capital expenditures that they're making? And I think we're seeing this come to a head in the last really week or two, where we've seen earlier this week, Barclays came out and said that they believe Oracle will run out of cash this time next year. Yeah. We've seen where Sam Altman was in an interview where he became very defensive and said, well, do you want to short OpenAI stock? It's not a publicly traded stock. Nobody could do that anyway. But he's saying there will be lots of people who would be willing to get your shares. If he really felt that, he wouldn't be so defensive. I think he protests too much. And so he knows they're burning through cash at this high rate. And what's happening is the credit markets are starting to ask these tough questions and saying, where's the return on investment? We're not giving you any more cash to light on fire. And so it led to last week, I believe it was, Sam Altman came out and basically said the federal government is going to need to backstop OpenAI's data center build out because this is a national security issue. And then we had the CEO of NVIDIA came out shortly after that and said, well, China is winning the AI race, trying to instill this fear. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to get the government to come in as the lender of last resort to prop up these capital expenditures. And we've seen this many times before. It doesn't mean that artificial intelligence isn't a transformative technology. I definitely believe it is, but I don't think necessarily these companies are all going to be the ones that are part of that transformation. We saw this in the 19th century with railroads. We had dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of railroad companies, and they took in a lot of investor cash, built out a lot of rail line, and then most of those went bankrupt. And the ones that survived bought that track for pennies on the dollar, and the railroads transformed the nation. Same way in the dot-com boom, we saw all these companies, the internet's going to transform the world, and all these companies went to the moon. And then we found out that, yeah, it did transform the world, but not immediately at that time and not with those particular companies. And so other companies picked up those assets, especially all that cable and broadband at pennies on the dollar, and then they transformed things. So I think we're in the same place with AI, where we've had a lot of hype that's come a little bit too soon. AI will be transformative, but in the meantime, I think the solution to all this power consumption is we're going to see much more efficient technologies going forward, and it's just not going to be needed because, again, the capacity isn't there and the cash isn't there, even if the capacity was. So what can happen won't.
Well, let me ask you this. Early in the days of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, there were charts and graphs that showed that the growth of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies would eventually consume all the power generated in the world. That didn't seem to happen. Do you know why it didn't happen that way?
I'm not familiar with what those projections were or why they were made.
Well, yeah, the projections were that if Bitcoin continued to grow at the rate in other cryptos, at the rate that they were growing, because they use computer power to do their calculations to generate the
hashing algorithms. Yeah,
the tokens or whatever, and it's energy efficient. And I know people that were, I had a friend, he was making $12 a month using his computer downtime to do these calculations. He was part of a network, but that just never panned out that way. And I remember the articles that it was going to consume all the power generated in anywhere on the planet if it continued to grow at the rate that it did. And it continued to grow, but the power consumption didn't seem to catch up. So, Britt, were you saying that the chips will become more efficient eventually?
Right. And I don't necessarily know that all this computing power is needed. I mean, we've seen China come out with their own models that don't use this type of computing power. And then, of course, we'll also see much more.
How do you know that, though? Is that because China tells you that it doesn't?
Well, it's because other people that have used the model tell me that.
Okay.
But, also we see biological computing, which the human brain is a very sophisticated computer and it's very energy efficient. And so eventually we're going to drive down to that technology. But again, if we can't, then economically it's unfeasible to run these things. So again, in order for it to happen, you have to have a return on investment. It has to be economically feasible. And so that's just the reality that's on the ground. So we'll see how it all plays out.
I think the brain is efficient. And it's also true that having been stuck in the U.S. travel system for a couple of days, I can say that it may be efficient, but it's also not used very much, the brain power.
What's going to happen when we transition to 6G too, as far as the need for power? Because that's going to be taking on a whole new level of that.
Well, is 6G so? I remember, my stepfather-in-law was involved with I think he and a guy wrote the first computer program to automate a assembly line, industrial assembly line, anywhere in the world. But back then, computers filled a room. I remember the data center at Indiana State when I was in graduate school about 49 years ago. The computers consumed a big room. And so as time, the computer power increased exponentially, but the power consumption went the other way. I mean, so I run around with a MacBook computer, a phone, and an iPad, and they can run on a battery for the better part of a day, each of them. So I just don't know. I'm trying to figure out what the actual consumption power is going to be. Let me ask you this question, because this is the question I said I was going to ask. In the past, in industrial development, how did utility needs of developing industrial companies, how was that handled in the past? Patrick, you were around when electricity was invented. I mean,
well, exactly. I was actually. I resemble that remark. When utilities were utilities, they were classed as public utilities because they were monitored and controlled by the state as well as the industry side of it as well. So if they wanted to have a rate increase, whatever, they had to apply to get the permission to raise the rates. But what the deal was, they were committed to provide the power necessary to power industry, whatever it was in the local area, especially. And if they didn't do that, they failed their job. And it wasn't enough. It wasn't in their power to say, well, we only have so much energy, but we have a growing population and we have a growing business, all that stuff. They couldn't say, we're going to jack up your rates because we don't have enough energy. It was up to them, in other words, to provide ample energy at basically a neutral price point to power everything in the economic system. This has gone out the door at this point. This philosophy is long gone. So wave goodbye to it. The whole matrix has changed at this point.
Other guys?
I would like to talk about some of the creative things I heard recently about water usage. There's no way. This might have been at XAI and the efforts that Elon's doing. But if memory serves here, and it may not because I'm getting older too, Patrick, I believe that they solve this problem by processing sewage, unlimited inflow of water, although it is contaminated. And they have to process that water, and it's not just normal tap water anymore, even when it comes out of those things like you'd have in any municipality. In computer, industry, especially chip fab, that water has to be ultra pure, 1 part per billion. It's unbelievable how they have to process that water. So, but the water that they're doing for these server racks is not in manufacturing. It's just in heat exchange cooling. So they have pipes and they have heat exchangers, and that seems like one of the reasons why they've been able to get past some of these issues. Is in X's case especially, they have sewage water source unlimited virtually. You also have on-premise power generation systems that they trucked in from Tesla. The battery systems help stabilize the power, and they're bringing in gas-fired plants, if I remember too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I just as a general, looking at it from my point of view, I think this infra structure scale out is way out of control right now. It somehow it has occurred to people that if we own the facility, we have unlimited potential to capture future revenue streams. And I just don't see the correlation. The price for AI is going to zero, basically. And so how do you capture revenue on that other than just selling data profiles to big companies based on the scraping that you do? So I don't get it. I think I'm one of those that does believe that there's going to be a bubble, and that bubble is, I think, going to hit really hard. That comment about Oracle running out of cash flow sometime next year is shocking for as senior and well-entrenched company as it has been at the forefront of database technology for decades.
And still is, really.
It is. It's absolutely running half the world, if not more. Microsoft SQL Server is running the other half, by the way. So very mature systems, very entrenched. Oracle is very, very expensive to run on their stuff. And I don't know, guys, I think that there's a cliff coming. And as we may discuss later tonight, the financial situation or any kind of market disruption could force investors and other groups to pull back. But one thing that I found was very interesting was NVIDIA's doing deals where they are injecting equity into a partner so the partner can then buy more chips from NVIDIA.
Yes.
And they're taking equity with that deal. So NVIDIA's market cap and its cash flow and its unbelievable success right now has fueled this deficit spending loop inside of these big tech companies. And on one hand, it's very clever what they're doing, but on the other hand, it's highly leveraged. And anytime you have leverage, that could be a recipe for a big, let's say, a correction.
Did this happen in the last tech bubble, which was, I don't even remember how long ago it was, early 2000s?
Yeah, the last tech bubble was 1999, and I don't think it was anything like this is that we see today. I think this is a whole different animal.
Right. I'm actually doing an article on this. This is what my whole week's been spent on. The AI bubble they're projecting now is going to be 17 times the size of the dot-com frenzy and 4 times the size of the 2008 bubble with real estate. So what could be taking place with AI is going to be incredible with it. And as Scott's saying, Microsoft just invested $13 billion into OpenAI. Then OpenAI took around and went and bought $13 billion worth of product from Microsoft. So basically, I'm giving you $100, you're giving me $100. And what's happening is we're telling our customers that we're making $100, but no one is. And it gets crazy what's going on with that. There's 7 companies right now: Amazon, Google, Apple, Microsoft, NVIDIA, Meta, and Tesla. They're controlling the Fortune 500 companies. They're saying if those 7 companies weren't doing this circular rotation, the stock market itself wouldn't have grown at all in the last 2 years. And what the dangerous part of this comes up is people's retirements and pensions are tied to this, because the stocks are going up because I'm making billions of dollars, but I'm not making any money because I'm just giving you $1 billion and you're giving it back to me. And we're telling our stockholders we got $1 billion coming in. So the stock's going up, but eventually that's where the bubble's going to come in. That's where they're saying it's 17 times worse than the dot-com bubble. It's going to be not good.
It'll be catastrophic.
I've been warning people about this for all year, over and over again, because so many people's retirement accounts are linked to the S&P 500 index, and we tend to think, well, I'm diversified, I own these 500 companies, but it's not an equal weighted index. It's a market cap weighted index. So those 7 companies you referred to make up over 1/3 of the total value of the S&P 500. So, the Bible tells us we should be diversified, and many people think they're diversified. They think I own 500 different companies, but 7 companies are driving all of that. And so just as they've driven gains on the way up, on the way down, they're going to be bringing down that whole index and people's retirement accounts with it.
Exactly. And they're saying, again, the stock market would not have moved at all in the last 2 years if it wasn't for what these 7 companies are doing.
But how do those market cap ratios, like the top 7 companies being a third of the S&P 500, I think you said, Britt. How does that compare to what they've been historically?
It's
Way
at
lower.
an all-time high of concentration. We've only seen concentrations in this ballpark in 1929 and during the dot-com bubble, and the NASDAQ in the dot-com bubble. So it's really across the board where overvaluations in the stock market we have never seen in U.S. history before. I mean, price to sales, PE ratios, it doesn't matter what you look at. And especially in those top 7, even 10 stocks, it's extremely high overvaluations. Again, these companies may turn out well, but it does not mean that the price you pay for it justifies that. And so this history tells us this is going to end badly for the people invested in these companies.
Right. OpenAI right now has $1.3 trillion committed, but yet they're projected to lose $8.5 billion just this year. So they're making commitments that they can't honor.
Okay, they're worth 1.3 trillion. You said
no, they are making OpenAI is making financial commitments to Stargate, to Oracle, to Broadcom. They're making those kind of financial commitments of $1.3 trillion, but yet they're projected to lose $8.5 billion this year alone.
Yeah. So essentially, it's a Ponzi scheme.
Basically,
they're counting on other people to lend them the dollars. They call them investors. Give us this your cash, and we'll give you an equity stake in this. And they're just burning through cash left and right. And what's happening now is they're panicking because they realize those investors aren't lined up anymore. That people don't like having their cash lit on fire. And so that's why we see Sam Altman talking about a backstop from the U.S. government. They want the U.S. government to bail out OpenAI, and they're trying to present it as a national security issue. And it's not really a national security issue. If they can't be viable as a company, they need to go away, and someone else needs to take their place.
Exactly.
Yeah. There's another aspect of this I want to bring up, because nobody's talking about this probably except me. But I have an economic background. That's when I started out with Professor Anthony Sutton. He was a professor of economics at USCLE and then at Stanford University. And so that's always been a favorite subject to mine for me. And at this point, the economic tools that we used to use to analyze what was going on, those don't work anymore. They haven't worked for probably 10, 15 years at least. And that's unfortunate because we're still talking about money, supply and demand, and the market stock, what the stock market is likely to do, what's the valuation, all those type of indicators. They don't work anymore, and everybody pretty universally agrees that they don't work like they used to. At this point, it seems like the tech oligarchs, like the Elon Musks of the world, the Sam Altmans, the Peter Thiels of the world, it seems almost like they're reaching for escape velocity by driving all this thing in the present, at least, in a way that makes no sense at all economically. But if they have another idea in their mind for a different kind of payoff, in other words, they may not be looking for hard cash down the road, but if they figure a way to either convert data into cash or convert control into cash, maybe cash is not the word to use here. Maybe it's not even measured in that. Maybe it's measured in control itself. There might be another play. All I'm saying is that there might be another thing going on here that we can't see, at least directly. You can't look at it directly and see it. But I do know these tech oligarchs they're talking in language that makes no sense to me, and probably you guys as well, if you heard the whole thing, everything that they're saying. But when they talk about this, for instance, the concept of sovereign corporations, where sovereign corporations will own the property and society, and they'll make all the decisions for everything gets consumed, and they're going to run the whole country or countries like startup companies. This is crazy talk as far as I'm concerned. But this is the philosophy that they're bringing to the table. That's not me saying that. That's what they're saying.
So I think hey, Patrick, don't you think that the whole point of this stuff is to capitalize on the Great Reset? Because that is what is going to bring in tokenization of real world assets.
Yes.
And all the people that own, I shouldn't say the word own, but have property, titled property, cars, boats, land, homes. I think if there's a liquidity crisis with the Great Reset, which I think there will be, then what'll happen is there'll be almost like a margin call. They'll call the loan. And when you do that, I think there's the legal loophole to have another entity come in and buy that asset from the lender at some very discount rate, and then they'll tokenize it and own it from there. Have you thought about that?
I have a lot, by the way. I'm sitting on a white paper right now. I don't dare release it at this point. Everybody would write me off completely, but I've been thinking about this a lot.
If you want me to proofread that for me, let me know.
Okay. I'll tell you, I'll give you the gist of it though. Islamic finance is an asset-based system. They have no debt. They don't charge interest. So debt is off the table for anybody in Islamic finance. That means the whole Mideast. That means all the 1.2 billion Muslims in the world. They're basically all debt free. And the economic system that they're attached to at this point is all based on asset accounting. Well, at this point, we have all this debt over here that this has been plaguing us for a long time. Everybody knows it's going to be a train wreck, whatever explodes. But if they're thinking at this point that they can flip us into an asset-based system and away from a debt-based system, then tokenization makes a lot of sense, because tokenization lifts the value out of an asset, a physical asset like property, for instance, real estate. That you can't steal real estate. You can't back up a truck and take the power or the dirt away. If tokenization can lift the value out of assets, real estate, houses, whatever type of private property, then that can be tokenized and spread around the world to other countries, used in commerce like they do in Islamic banking in the Mideast. Well, you don't find a lot of people in America talking about Islamic finance. I can't hardly find anybody that will talk to me about this, but I know it exists. But they keep it close to their vest, I guess. But the people that are talking about Sharia law, for instance, in our country today, God bless them all. They're doing a great job, but they don't understand the Sharia finance angle of the Middle and the Mideast. What this means for us is the system that they're creating right now in Washington, D.C., based on the Genius Act and the big beautiful bill and the tokenization system. They're putting a private tokenization system they're putting together that's not just for payment, it's also for tokenizing raw assets. Well, this asset-based tokenization, it just so happens to line up perfectly with Sharia banking. I find that just curious. What on earth is going on here? They're lining it up to be compatible with Islamic banking. And then you see President Trump talking to all the Arab countries at this point about investing money in America. This is all asset-based money. And, why does Qatar get a facility in Idaho to train their pilots that were, when Qatar has financed Hamas and Hezbollah in the first place? There's so many questions here. Why is this kind of this linkage taking place here? So I'm very suspicious that something's up with this whole asset tokenization nonsense. But the problem is with that, there's no tools to figure out what's enough, what are they going to do with it? How's it going to affect us? And so we're just kind of flying in the dark at this point. We just don't have the economic tools to figure out what's going to happen. At least I don't. If I was an expert on, like if I was an Islamist and I was in banking world, I certainly would have some tools, but they escape me here.
But Patrick, we've been hearing about the Great Reset and you'll own nothing and be happy. That's basically what we're talking about, the post-crash economy, if you could even call it that.
Yes.
So everything will be rented, leased. You will not own it. You'll rent it,
Yeah.
And
yes.
To do that, you've got to break the existing system. And this goofy expression on that dude, blonde hair, remember that? Is just... It's going to fracture the minds of the American culture and our legal system and everything else. It will lead to very dark outcomes, I'm afraid.
So how does it play into the Bible prophecy thing that we talk about mark of the beast system? Because there is a big economic component to that. And do you think that this Islamic-based tokenization thing is sort of merged together and will be used by the coming beasts to control everything? Is that one of the ways he's going to do this?
If you look at Revelation chapter 13 and go forwards and backwards, okay, look for the existence. We talk about buying and selling. We understand that you have something in your pocket, maybe, I don't know, whatever it would be, but you're not going to be buying or selling it, except they have the mark of the beast. But see if you can find any mention of debt. I don't see it personally. I don't see it. If you can find it, I'd like to see it. Your evidence of that. It might be there. There's
no mention of what? Say that again.
If you can find mention of debt, where debt plays a role in the tribulation, you would think based on how we are today that there's some mention of debt somewhere along the way. You'd think, but for instance, when they talk about buying and selling the souls of men, that seems to be a cash transaction. That you talk about the merchants of the world, they're getting rich from their trade because they're based on trade in gold, hard gold. You don't see the debt system at that point. So I'm just saying, I just making a theory right now, but that's a question that I want to ask, and I want to see an answer on it at some point. So.
Well, and it would make sense too, if you're going to have a global system, you don't want to have these imbalances that the current debt-based monetary system creates. And you can, in a lot of ways, nations have moved away from gold because of the transaction cost of moving this around. That's why people turned to banknotes 100 years ago. You can carry this piece of paper that's a claim ticket instead of carrying this heavy gold around. But if you had a system where the gold was vaulted and you got a digital currency claim ticket for it that you could exchange for physical gold at any time, then you've effectively created a gold standard digital currency. And that allows you to divide that into an infinite amount of different small amounts of gold. You could trade electronically very conveniently at low cost, and you would have a stable currency that's accepted all around the world. So that makes sense, Patrick, that's what you would see in a global system. And probably a lot of countries are going to demand that in the aftermath of the failure of this current debt-based monetary system.
Yes, exactly. You see, when you see the horse riding out the, not, was it the one of the four horsemen, that's where it says a quart of wheat for whatever, some small,
hyperinflation.
Exactly.
That's the third horse.
Exactly. And there's a transaction based on labor, not debt. But labor is very current. If you work for somebody and you get a token or a piece of silver or whatever, that's your day's wage, right? So you have no opportunity to leverage that somehow by going to somebody else and borrowing money against that. So seems to me that there's the cash, the asset system is in place at that point. Maybe even early in the tribulation period. But if we're transitioning away from this today, it's going to be rocky for sure. But maybe it's just going to there you go. Maybe it's just going to consume everybody, and we'll just have to eat our dessert, so to speak, and just be happy with it. But I have a curious mind, and I understand something about economics, and nothing makes sense to me today with this asset-based system. But I'm thinking about a lot. I'll just say that for sure.
Well, Patrick, you mentioned the Genius Act, and I actually wrote an article on that not too long ago. And the United States Senate Banking Committee actually put that into law. And what that is, that's legal framework for stable coins. So, and the stable coins leads right into the central bank digital currency, which goes against all assets. So are you saying that since this was already put in place, we already have a law on that with the Genius Act? Are you saying we're that close to that aspect of it then?
Absolutely, we are. And let me explain why President Trump signed the executive order banning the central bank, our central bank, to continue its research on central bank digital currencies. Okay, that was almost the first thing he did when he took office. Well, the central bank had been researching payment systems. In other words, things that you'd make payments, like international payments and so on, with the SWIFT system or whatever it was called. And payment systems are concerned with, well, making payment. You owe somebody some money and you want to get it to them. Well, you go to the bank and you make sure they get the money to them. Well, the central bank never had any other role other than to research payment systems. Now, what President Trump did with the Genius Act, especially when he introduced Tether into the mix, thanks to the Secretary of Commerce, by the way, Howard Lutnick, who owns a lot of Tether in the first place, a total conflict of interest. Don't get me started on that. But when you consider the other side of tokenization is asset tokenization. Asset tokenization. This is where it's not payment issues, but asset tokenization now allows them to take assets, whether it's treasury bills or real estate. It doesn't matter. Now they can make parallel asset tokens to go along with these payment tokens. Well, let me put this in context for you, because Howard Lutnick lusted over on national TV. He lusted over the property that the United States holds in its inventory. 680 million acres, almost is over 30% of the land mass of America. Well, he said on national TV, if he could just get his hands on that real estate, probably worth multiple $1 trillion. He said maybe as much as $500 trillion. Wow. If he could make that into a tokenization project where they could just make 0.25%, and he just said it just that way. If we could just get 100, 0.25%, why we could pay off the national debt. Whoa, wait a minute, Howard. Well, this wasn't his to take in the first place, but he's lusting over it. And this was clearly the plan before this Genius Act was put in place in the first place. So he's stated his intention to tokenize. This is on another level other than payments just from Joe to Mary sort of thing. But if they successfully can tokenize our real estate assets and other assets, our gold and Fort Knox, etc., if all these things can be tokenized, the value could be lifted up out of them and then spread around the world as they see fit, basically leaving us with nothing but cannon fodder at this point, I guess, because somebody now owns the property. But you see, this is the scheme that was hatched early on, and it was actually, I'm sure it was, they talked about it a lot before the president was elected, but you see there was another agenda in play to tokenize all these assets. Now, where are those assets going to go? What's the point? Who's going to get them? I can't answer all that at this point, but it's nefarious, in my opinion. Whatever they're cooking up in their mind, their little sleazy little minds, I don't like it at all. Like Patrick Henry said years ago, I smell a rat. That's all I can say.
Well, BlackRock has been, trying to get their hands on, tokenized assets, and they're a main player in trying to drive that forward.
Yes.
Brett, I think you and I were talking about Vietnam requiring digital IDs of all of its citizens in one shot. So that's 80 some million people were told you must have a digital ID or what? That wasn't clear to me, but this whole idea with digital IDs being mandated in Vietnam, and we know the EU is rolling it out. I thought it'd be out by now, but apparently they may have delayed it. But it's all coming. It's all aligning. Britt, did you have an update on that Vietnam thing or the EU rollout of their digital ID?
Right. So in Vietnam, it was 86 million bank accounts. So it was required to provide your biometrics in order to have an open bank account in Vietnam. And so 86 million accounts weren't compliant with that, and they were closed in September as a result of that. And so I would expect to see this spread across the world. This is the type of control that these nations want. And I want to go back to, the stable coins. There's another aspect to this Genius Act rollout. And I think it's critical to show what's happening geopolitically. So over the last decade plus, nations have moved away from accumulating U.S. treasuries and debt. And we've heard about de-dollarization. Well, under the Genius Act, stable coins are required to be backed by either the U.S. dollar or U.S. treasuries. Yeah. And so this creates an artificial demand. If you can drive people into those stable coins, then it creates demand for U.S. dollars and U.S. treasuries. Yeah. And then that creates an issue where other nations see this as a threat against their sovereignty. So one of the reasons we're seeing the digital euro rollout in the EU and them talking about rolling this out as soon as possible, they've publicly stated, well, we're at the mercy of the United States. We're under threat of losing our monetary sovereignty because from an electronic payment standpoint, people are using Visa, MasterCard, Apple Pay, Google Pay. They are not using euro-based companies. And so if European citizens start using stable coins, then again, and this is one of the key points of the Genius Act that ties into what you were saying, John, which is how does this relate to the beast system? So in that legislation, I'm reading right here, it says, all stablecoin issuers must possess the technical capability to seize, freeze, or burn payment stablecoins when legally required and must comply with lawful orders to do so. So the government can control who buys or sells. They can destroy those coins, seize them, freeze them. And so from a sovereignty standpoint, imagine millions of your citizens hold these coins and a foreign nation has the ability to seize, freeze, or burn those coins. And so we can see why there's really an ongoing, you call it an arms race to roll out these digital currencies, because if we don't control our citizens, some other nation might. And so this is really, it's very nefarious, and we're seeing this happen right in front of us. And it sets the foundation for the mark of the beast system, because for generations outside of the supernatural, what we read in Revelation 13 and that mark of the beast was impossible. But now we see that it is.
So, Britt, I have two questions. One, I want to go back to Patrick's comment about Lutnick's lusting after federal government assets. Is that a fair statement? Is that how you sort of phrase that, Patrick?
Totally, yeah.
Okay, so my question was, and I hate to use the term play devil's advocate in a religious discussion on end-time Bible prophecy, but I'll play devil's advocate for a moment. Why shouldn't U.S. assets be used to offset the tremendous amount of debt that we have? I mean, doesn't the federal government, we have a balance sheet, we say we have debt, but the federal government also has assets, right?
It does. You know, it's interesting. All of the land that the government owns is traditionally thought. I haven't seen the source documents, so I can't really say specifically, but it's always been presented to me that all of the land that the United States owns is in a perpetual trust for the American people, not up for grabs. In other words, it's not on the balance sheet of the federal government.
Okay.
But at this point, this may be the biggest heist in the history of the world if they figure out some way to get it out of the hands of the people and into another form.
Okay. Now, the other question I had, I think, was maybe I had several questions. When we talk about tokenization, we're tokenizing physical assets, land, buildings, cars, even like roads, maybe highways.
Mm-hmm.
And is there tokenization coming of individuals?
Great point. You get the cigar.
Well, I'm just, by the way, Patrick, you have a new book out, right? With
I do.
What's her name?
Courtney Turner.
Courtney Turner. The Final Betrayal. That's what it's called. You can look that up on Amazon and get that and read it in the morning, so you'll be able to get to sleep the next night. Just summarize what that book's about.
Everything that we expected out of the Trump administration. Just think back to November 1, 2024. We were hoping for the populist movement, that is, the MAGA movement, the populist movement. We were hoping for soldiers to come home, spending to be stopped on wars. We wanted the government shrunk, legitimately shrunk in size. We wanted some agencies to be maybe canned altogether, like the education department. We expected that Trump would make America great again. That was a hopium that was sold basically to all the people in the country. Well, what did we get? Looking back now, just a year later, plus a few days, seven days, none of this has happened. Well, actually, the border got closed. That's a good thing. I can't argue with that. But now we have apparently an army of ICE agents running around doing ugly things to even citizens of America. Basically, they're being looked at as thugs, basically, at this point. It's very ugly, in my opinion. But now we have...
I will just say, I just came back from Israel. And when we landed in New York, everybody, the plane was packed. Every seat was full. And I told Patrick this before we started. Everybody got up, got their stuff out. You know, everybody's ready to get off that plane. And then they made an announcement. Everybody put all of your stuff away, put it back in the overhead bins, sit down in your seat and turn off your cell phones. ICE is here to come on the plane and take care of some business. So they eventually came on 4 guys, you know, the full, I don't know if they had helmets on or not. They were loaded for bear. Let's just put it that way. And they took a guy off, and as we got off the plane, then after that, you could see him behind a partition being interrogated by 5 ICE agents. I suggested too that maybe while they're all dressed up, they might head over and pick up the new mayor of New York and talk to him for a while. But some people on the plane like that. I don't know if others did, and I thought it was a good observation. So, and it was one of those times in my life where I did not self-censor. So anyway, so Patrick, I mean, I'm reading the description of your book, The Final Betrayal. Just came out a week ago, right?
The first. It did. And this is The Final Betrayal. This is chronicling everything that's happened since the inauguration, at least.
Can I just read the paragraph? Because I think I'm just going to read the description on Amazon. The Final Betrayal, How Technocracy Destroyed America. I didn't know you'd put this out yet, but and so, as I said, I probably don't want it. It's not bedtime reading because you may not sleep, but maybe during the day with some coffee. The dark horse of the New World Order was never communism, socialism, or fascism. It has always been technocracy. Started in the 1930s, reintroduced by the Trilateral Commission in 1973 as the new international economic order. Technocrats have staged a sweeping coup d'etat in plain sight in Washington, D.C. during the Trump presidency. Actually, that's a very accurate description, I think, of what's going on. The Dark Enlightenment wants to turn us into a monarchy. Tokenization is flipping us into an asset-based economic system where you will own nothing. AI is shoving us into a digital gulag. Like it or not, you must face this beast, either to destroy it or learn to live with it.
Yeah.
So,
wow. I wrote that, I guess.
It sounds worse. It sounds even bad to you, right?
I know.
You're scaring yourself, huh?
When you see how dark what this business of the dark enlightenment is, this is a philosophy that's driving all these tech bros in Washington, D.C. When you see how ugly this philosophy is, you'll just tear your hair out. How could they get away with this, thinking that they can come in, riding the Trump train, and just do this to us, totally antithetical to everything we've ever wanted in the first place, and basically to turn America upside down And when I said upside down, well, this could be the destruction of America at this point. This is what's on the table.
Yeah, but isn't it the destruction of every economy around?
It is. It'll take everybody else around down as well. Exactly so. America has always been the driving economic force of the world for long, at least 100 years, 150 years. And so this is why the Trilateral Commission wanted to capture the economic system of the United States, in particular in 1976, when Jimmy Carter was elected. And the Trilateral Commission swooped in and took all of the cabinet positions. Jimmy Carter was a member as well. Mondale was a member, vice president. Zbigniew Brzezinski came in as national security advisor. All these people were members of the Trilateral Commission. And they set up a system that's lasted now for 50 years to capture the economic system of the world in order to reform it into their own image, whatever they wanted to do with it. I didn't really understand this in 1978 or 9, but I do now for sure. It's very clear looking backward what they were trying to do. This is what we see today. This is the end game of their new international economic order. This is it.
How does that align with the Antichrist, Patrick, or anybody on the thing? David, what do you think about that? Total control.
I think a lot of people are going to be revising a lot of charts soon. That's my opinion.
Oh, yes.
I think we're seeing it globally, though, too, because, Scott, you brought up in Vietnam, what's happening there with them taking control of checking accounts. Well, you have 6 nations now where you cannot work unless you have digital ID. So employees are being held to that. So you cannot get a job. So if you live in Brazil or some of the countries over the European Union as well, you cannot have a job. So they control your money, whether you're earning it or whether you're putting it into the bank. And that all leads into what we're calling towards the end times and ultimate Revelation 13. But the total control is being put in place now, and people are yielding to it and welcoming it.
Yes.
And they'll flock to it as soon as things break.
Yeah. And this is where the church, again, can stand up and proclaim the truth and let people know. And that's why I'm willing to put the time in and be on a podcast like this so people can see this and say, no, wait a minute, I need to be aware of what's happening and all the technology is behind this, because what's the end game? And it's just, and the leaders of the technology, they know that. They have what they call, apocalyptic insurance. They're buying their bunkers in Hawaii and over in, New Zealand and everywhere else. They have their hideaways all planned. Why are they doing that? They know eventually what the end game's supposed to be. And the common man is just going to kind of be caught in that. And that's a chance for the church, really, to be able to speak up and say, here's a chance to really find the true light in the Lord Jesus Christ.
Amen.
So.
I think it's always been kind of my belief that, especially in the last few years, seeing everything since 2020, really deeply thinking about it, that I think the Lord is allowing this to happen. But I ask myself, what is the motive for the Lord doing it? And I think it's out of love for his bride. The bride is not ready. The bride is distracted. And the best way, I think, historically speaking, for believers to get back to their first love is persecution, unfortunately, pressure, distress, and so therefore, I think that we will see some of this. This is just my opinion, but I don't think that the Lord will let us go long in that season. I just don't see it, So I think there'll be a last, like you said, David, a last major focus of outreach for those that are on the correct side of the winnowing fork, and will be highly, highly missional. And the others will find yet again their excuse to leave, church to kind of say, hey, I'm out. None of this is working. You guys are crazy.
Right.
Meanwhile, the really sincere, humble believers are going to get the remnant, so to speak, will be stronger and stronger and stronger and more missional. And I do think that, this is just my thinking about the Lord's love for us, and what will he permit and what will he restrain, and how it will serve his purpose to bring him glory.
Right. Well, with the birth pains in Matthew 24, this, the 6 birth pains, the very last one is the gospel being preached around the world.
Yeah.
So I think that begins on this side of the tribulation, ultimately, concludes in the tribulation period. But that last birth pain is a positive one, with the gospel going around the world, and that's where the church fulfills that possible, that place.
And that's why I think that the tribulation saints, just like we sat on the shoulders of the apostles, the tribulation saints will also sit on the shoulders of the apostles, but also to us, the end time, strong believers in Jesus Christ that we're warning. So specifically, I'm talking about the churches that are preaching the whole gospel, the entire counsel of the Word of God. They're not shirking their biblical responsibility there, as well as all the watchmen and watchwomen community. So I think as people look backwards, I wrote an article called "Getting in the Mind of a Tribulation Saint" on my Substack that was very hard to read, or to write actually, and it's hard to read. So, but I think that that we're going to see amazing things happen. And the question that we all want to know is, when will that moment come where we're called home? So who knows? We don't know the day and the hour, that's for sure, but we do know the season. And guys, we are seeing the season in Technicolor right now. We're smelling the tribulation. We're seeing absolutely everything that the Bible talked about in pretty distinctive relief right now. And so it's not an escape theology, as Pastor Joseph Morris always says. It's a hustle mentality. So we need to be about the Father's business every time we see more and more evidence of this technology.
But we need to be very, very diligent about it too, because George Barna does his year-end church review, basically the state of the church. Just did his 6th one for this, last 6 years, and now he's saying that 37% of pastors, Christian evangelical pastors, do not have a Christian worldview. Right. So if that's not being preached in the pulpit, I mean, what hope is there for the people? That's why, people like us need to make sure that we're putting the truth out there, what's happening in the world with technology and such. But we also need to make sure the gospel is proclaimed in a very clear way, so that people need to hear that.
So when do we? I think I brought this up at a conference. At least the way I'm looking at it, we have this. There's sort of a threshold line that some of these prophecies where we will be able to say, this is that which was prophesied. And the question is, how do we? I don't expect an answer unless you have one. I'd love to hear it. How do we prepare the world to recognize that?
I think we're doing a great job of it already. We're pointing out, Britt's analysis on the financial thing, Patrick, the conspiracy of technocrats. David, you're talking a lot about 6G and other parallel. You're talking about quantum and AI as well as I do. So those are all the things that are, admittedly, these are based. The root of that is based on Revelation 13, and then you work backwards. So if every component that we can imagine, including national digital IDs, like you just saw in Vietnam and other countries adopting it, and the limits of what payment systems will do today. And I don't know if anyone's noticed the rigorousness of enrollments for things, subscriptions and other things, how many times you have to prove and jump through the hoops to confirm this email, text you this, get you that link before you're allowed really to go into that platform. It's every time I go through that, it's like a chokehold. And I just shake my head. It's like, yeah, I know we have a general security problem on the web. Yes, we've always had that. But it sounds to me, it presents more like ultimate control to me. And I don't know that it takes a real big leap to get there, you know.
Well, it's having just traveled internationally a couple times in the last few weeks, I'm in the system, because when I got on Delta, I don't know if I checked a box someplace or not, to be honest with you. Everybody's fumbling with their passports, as they're giving boarding passes. And I walked up, and before I could get my passport out, I think I scanned my boarding pass QR code that was in my Apple Wallet on my iPhone. The gate popped open, and they said, "Go on, you're good to go." So and then when I came back into the U.S., I was sort of waved through too. So I don't. I guess I'm in the system now. My whether it was intentional. Look, I don't know how you stay out of it. That's the.
I don't think you can.
If you're moving around in society, and then in Israel, Dave, you'll love this. I was at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and I was with some IDF Special Forces guys, and we had to go through X-ray machine. But Ari Abramowitz had given me his hat with the Temple Moshiach patch on it, and I had that on, and the security guard took. I don't know if he saw. Well, it was either one. I'm going with the hat. It was the hat. The other alternative was he looked at this old, this big old fat old guy and figured I'm not a threat to anybody anyway. So they'd be able to tackle me before I got too far. So he just waved his hand over the thing, and the gate opened, and I walked in, and all the other IDF guys are having to go through extra security and X-ray machines. So it's a strange world.
John, let me ask you something about being in Israel, because I think as much as we talk about technology and what's happening in the world, I think one big sign that we miss is Israel. We say, well, what day are we at, and how close are we to the mark of the beast, or how close are we to Revelation 13? We have to look at Israel. First of all, Israel had to be a nation, and for many, many years it wasn't, obviously. Then Jerusalem had to be the focus of that nation, which was there. And the third key thing, Isaiah 11, the Jews had to be regathered back into the land. There's only two regatherings in Scripture. The first one from Babylon after they were exiled there, and the second one is in the very last days. And I've been watching the population in Israel for almost 20 years. I've been teaching prophecy for about 20 years. And we have to understand that we are the first generation since AD 70 where more Jews are now living in Israel than out of Israel. So when you were just over there, did you notice how many people are moving back to Israel? Last time I was there, there's a group from Ethiopia. They just came there, and there's a whole group of them, about 30 of them. And
yeah. Well, it was interesting. On the way back, I had a conversation.
You're talking Aliyah, right? The permanent relocation.
Aliyah, they had no job. They had no family. God was just calling them back. That's what he said. God's called us back to the land.
Well, I don't want to listen. So Danny Seaman at JNS and Jamie Hancock from All Israel News came over the other night to talk, and we're sitting at Christ Church, which is like this little oasis in the old city. And I thought we'd have 45 minutes. We talked 3 hours, and then we went to lunch for dinner for 2.5 hours, talking about this. And David, I'm telling you, something is going on. There's so many stories I could tell you. I will tell you what Danny told us about his grandfather. He's Jewish, and his grandfather spent a year coming to Israel over 100 years ago. He had never heard of Herzl. He'd never heard of the Zionist movement. He'd never heard the word Zionism or anything. And he traveled for a year to go back to Israel because he was reading his Bible and said that there would be this regathering of people in the land. And so then he went back, however many months that took, and then spent another year coming back with his family. That was in the early 1900s to 1920, somewhere in that time frame. And again, he'd never heard about Zionism. He came to that conclusion on his own, and it was a very interesting time to be there. I will be covering this in my updates as they as I have time. It was incredible. I mean, so you go down Jaffa Street. I took the train and light rail to my hotel when I got there November 1st for the media summit. And you go down Jaffa Street, and I've been to Israel a number of times. The amount of construction of new housing in Jerusalem is shocking. I mean, I traveled a lot in my career. I was in Dallas and Houston when they were in LA and all those places, when all the housing boom and the businesses and everything. I'm telling you, there are giant construction cranes all over Jerusalem, all over Israel, Ashkelon, Ashdod, down on the Mediterranean, and Tel Aviv. It's shocking. But within Jerusalem itself, like from the central train station down Jaffa Street to the old city, is one giant construction zone as far as you can see. And I walked over to a friend's house for Shabbat near city, a couple blocks from City Hall there, a few blocks from the old city. And I looked through, the little, where you could see down into where they're building. These foundational foundations that they're building are 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 stories deep below the ground level that you're walking on. So they're not just putting up little pop-up, a trailer park or something. Nothing wrong with trailer parks, but these are going to be big, massive buildings. And I don't know how people are going to move in Jerusalem. They're building light rail, tunnels, roads. Right now, the traffic is almost intolerable. And so it's because they're coming back, but then you layer on top of that, we have 2 million Jews living in New York.
Until the mayor goes in.
Well, and that's what I'm saying is they're planning on coming back. I was down in Efrat with a developer on my tour 4 weeks ago, and they're building 7,000 homes in Efrat. It blows your mind. Yeah. So I don't know if that answers your question, but they are all coming back, and there's a big group of them talking about a temple and all this stuff. And then there's all this historical record that's being the proof of their belonging in that land is overwhelming as well. It's being discovered literally every day. They're digging something up.
Yeah. And that's why I say, gentlemen, we live in a day that we haven't seen since AD 70. So it's
interesting. On the way back, they ran at McDonald's at the airport, and you can't get a cheeseburger. That's one problem. We're going to have a talk in the millennium about that one. I'm pretty sure I'm right on that one, that they're wrong, but I tell them that. But I was talking to a conservative rabbi from the New York area, and I said, "What's your name?" And he said, "My name is Paul." I said, "Oh, well, I'm familiar with another Jewish rabbi named Paul." And he laughed. He knew what I was talking about. But I'm just telling you is, I know people in ministries, they're getting approached by dozens to hundreds of Orthodox Jews every day asking questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when they return, they come back in the same condition they left, which is unbelief. But that's when the ministry can be done.
Well, we're in the midst of this. There's something going on. What I'm trying to tell you is there's this process that we're in. We know that there's going to be a reconciliation, and I don't know. We're in the midst of this. By the way, there's an awakening on that side of the aisle. There's an awakening going on our side of the aisle about what we might have missed also, I think. It's a remnant thing on both sides. Okay, so now let's go back. So let's This is Technocracy. Well, by the way, tremendous interest in Israel in AI and technology. That's driving a lot of what's behind the Abraham Accords. United Arab Emirates is big into it. The Saudis are big into it. There's a enormous tech industry in Israel. And the interesting is, David, you've been there. You've been in Gaza. You've been up in Lebanon.
Yeah,
and I want to talk to you about that at some point on my podcast. But it's a war zone, but it's so alive. I never felt at risk. I was even up at Metula, right on the border, and then of course the bombing the next day.
Yep.
For which I was grateful. But it's such an interesting place, and it really is the epicenter.
Yeah,
and then I was there when Trump came again too. So
I was in Metula there, and I actually found one citizen who's still there. But I went across the border into Lebanon, where there's an outpost there. There's a young soldier, 20, 22 years old, and I said, "Do you speak English?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "I just want you to know, there's a church. I know a church in Phoenix, Arizona, praying for you. And I just want to know that you guys are important to us. We're praying for you." And he almost, teared up, and he said, "Thank you." He said, "The world hates us, but thank you for supporting us."
Well, we went down to Hebron
Mm-hmm.
to the Tomb of the Patriarchs on a day when they were expecting 40,000 Orthodox Jews to show up during Sukkot. It was a madhouse, but the operator of our tour had a good idea. She bought free slice of pizza and a soft drink coupons, and we passed them out to all the IDF soldiers, and they just absolutely loved it. I thought it was a great idea.
Yeah.
So anyway, part about to reel this back in to kind of get back on Technocracy. And I'll be covering a lot of this in my updates in the next few weeks. I did an interview with Olivier Melnick that should be posted. May have already been posted. I don't know. You might look that up. But so let's go back. So I want to go back to the investment in round tripping a little bit, because I don't think we closed that off a little bit. I was just reading an article in tomorrow's Financial Times, which comes out. It's tomorrow over there already. So I'm reading it. And Anthropic is talking about investing $50 billion in data centers. But then it talks about all these deals that Anthropic is doing with OpenAI and Broadcom and that type of thing. So Britt or David or any one of you or all of you, tell us, you mentioned the term round tripping, and I don't know that we've really explained it that well.
Well, go ahead, David. You've written on this recently.
On what? I'm sorry, what you're asking for, John?
Round tripping on how these investments flow through the system.
Well, again, you get those 7 companies that are doing that. They're not selling. There's no products being sold. There's no commerce being done. There's no business being done, but yet everything's being inflated. So when something gets inflated like that, it's going to be the balloon. It's going to be the bust. And when that bust happens, it's going to affect the common world. It's going to affect the globe, but more, it's going to affect the average person who believes we're being deceived in another way, thinking that stocks are going up, the companies are going up, that things are getting stronger, that we have hope in a future. And again, when 6G comes in, the AI, 6G has to be built around AI. AI has to be in control of everything, because there's so much data that humans just can't keep up with it. Everything from traffic control to banking, and everything that Patrick was talking about ties right into that. But this balloon is going to bust. And when it does, there's no bailout. There's no bank to bail them out. And so when the pensions go away and the retirements go away, what happens to the world? And maybe that goes back to what you talked about, where we own nothing after all these years because we're going to rent if we can afford that. But the pieces are there. And again, I just hope that the Christians, the church, understand this, because a lot of people have questions. And the church can have the answers if we're in tune to this bubble that's about to break.
Yeah,
so
in terms of the round tripping, so for instance, take NVIDIA. NVIDIA might say, well, we're going to invest $10 billion into company XYZ. That's an AI company. And then company XYZ turns around and buys $10 billion worth of chips from NVIDIA.
Right.
So in essence, NVIDIA then NVIDIA books that as revenue and says, look at this. Right. And then at the same time, they're carrying on their books, well, we have a 10 billion equity stake in this company that's worth $40 billion, whatever it may be.
Yeah, Microsoft put 13 billion into OpenAI, and then Oracle put $100 billion into that, and then they put around and put it back to OpenAI as well. And the same thing, OpenAI went back and bought, Stargate, and they bought other things. So all those companies are doing exactly that. They're just passing the buck. It's the same dollar, but they're counting it twice.
But when you say NVIDIA put 10 billion into this company, or Oracle put 100 billion into this company, they're actually infusing cash into those companies of that amount.
And they're taking equity and they're getting a captive order that comes back to them.
Right.
I have the perfect story. Actually, it's a joke to explain this. There was a guy that owned a mule, and he wanted to sell a mule to a friend. And he sold it to him for $100. Then the friend decided he wanted to get rid of the mule. For whatever reason, he wanted to put the mule up for sale for $120. His friend, the first friend, saw the price tag on the mule, figured that the mule is more valuable now. I'm going to buy that mule for $120. So he buys a mule for $120. Then he turns around and sells it for $140. And the other guy, what's going on here? This thing's going to the moon here, and he buys the mule for $140. This goes on until the price of the mule, they go back and forth, sell this mule to each other, and all of a sudden the mule is worth $500.
And now they can afford a lawyer.
Well, that's exactly right.
For 10 minutes.
I know. So the final guy, whatever, he got kicked off the mule, and he shot the mule and killed him. Well, the first guy, he comes back to, what did you do that for? We were making all this money. What did you kill him for? And anyway, that's where the story ends at that point. But it was all based on one mule being sold multiple times. And they both thought they were making a bunch of money. Of course, they didn't make any money at all, but they thought they were making money.
I learned of another financial problem that's happening with these big tech deals that are floating between these companies. And it is a financial disclosure problem that has been characterized by some analysts as being, fraudulent. And that is they're understating depreciation expense on their balance sheets and on their income statement as they write it off every year. And the theory is that when they acquire these, H200 racks full of these chips, that their allocation depreciation schedule, the way that they depreciate it is over, let's say 5 to 7 years, whatever the legal limit is. But in reality, will those assets actually be functioning, running as hard as those chips are at the very max of performance physics today? And that they're actually not worth what they are on the books. And that there's another form of I would say, inflationary asset problem. Britt, have you heard about this with depreciation that's being underreported and undervalued?
Yeah, well, I know it came out recently that Michael Burry had taken out large short positions on NVIDIA, I believe it was, and Palantir. And part of that was he was stating that they were doing exactly that. They're carrying these NVIDIA chips, for instance, on the books at, they're going to last for 10 years, hold this value for 10 or 12 years, when in reality it's about 2 years. And so, the math just isn't adding up with these things. And, we've had a number of questions that I've seen pop up about, isn't some sort of catastrophe needed for this mark of the beast system to roll out? And I think we're watching this happen right before us, because we're in the last moments of this dying debt-based monetary system that we talked about before. It's like a Ponzi scheme. It requires ever greater amounts of debt to continue on. And the moment that no more debt can be taken on, it implodes in on itself. So we hear about all of the M2 currency supply that's been created, all of the dollars. And that's not necessarily just printing of dollars. Dollars are loaned into existence by banks and other entities when they make a loan to someone. But when those loans are defaulted on, it actually eliminates and shrinks that currency supply. And I think we're beginning to see that we're at the top of that roller coaster ride. We're about to go downhill. We've seen First Brands is a huge credit loss. We saw, I think it was earlier this week, that BlackRock had loaned $150 billion to an entity and marked it down to zero a month after they were counting it at 100%. So we're seeing these defaults. Jamie Dimon, CEO of JP Morgan, he called them credit cockroaches, meaning there's not just, when you see one, it means there's a whole bunch of other ones that you don't see yet. And we're starting to see these emerge. I think what we're seeing in the AI space, where we're seeing this private credit dry up, and we're seeing OpenAI say we want to backstop, and it's showing that the loans are no longer being made, and soon they will be defaulted on. And when they're defaulted on, it's going to shrink the currency supply. That is deflationary. And we're set up for a deflationary bust on par with the Great Depression. We mentioned earlier, we're seeing overvaluations that are on par in the US stock market with the Great Depression, 1929. We'd never seen overvaluations like this. And here we have a residential housing bubble right now in the United States that's bigger than what we saw in 2006. Back then, it was 6.7 times the median income to buy the median priced house. Now it's 7.36. The average is 3.5 to 4 over time. We're extremely overvalued. We had Trump come out earlier this week and try to prop this bubble up, saying we should have 50-year loans, 50-year mortgages. But again, even if that happens, that extends it for just a brief bit of time. And eventually, what can't be paid back will not be paid back. And then the credit bubbles start to pop and the collapse begins. And that implosion just feeds on itself. As we see bankruptcies, then people are laid off from work and they can't buy products. And that means there are other bankruptcies. And these credit bubbles pop all the way down, and it shrinks the currency supply, making dollars harder to come by. So while we're hearing much of the world talk about inflation, in the short term, that's not the problem we're looking at. Just as we look back at the great financial crisis, in July of 2008, oil was $147 a barrel. By November, it was $40. And this can happen very quickly once we turn the corner on this credit story. And we're getting very near to that. Seeing these credit issues popping up on an almost daily basis at this point is telling us how close we are to that time.
But Brett, you do see the AI bubble breaking, though, correct?
Yes, I think it's good. As you said, this is a bubble that's enormous, and it's going to bring down. But they're overbuilding again. They're lighting cash on fire. That's somebody lent that cash to them, right? And
right.
The Microsoft CEO said, "We're betting the farm on AI."
Right.
Well, there are a lot of people saying they have lost that bet, and Microsoft is a very large corporation. And so it doesn't mean that Windows isn't a product that many people use, but it means they've spent billions upon billions of dollars in capital expenditures that they will not receive an adequate return on. And this money goes to money. These dollars go to dollar heaven. When that happens, they just get wiped away.
So when we're talking about technology and a coming beast system, maybe we ought to talk about some theories that some of these 10 kings that arise might be giant tech companies. I mean, what's NVIDIA market cap? Over 5 trillion. And Microsoft above 4 trillion, Apple above 4 trillion, Oracle. I mean, these are enormously valuable companies. I mean, I think NVIDIA is worth more than the entire UK stock market. All companies. I mean, it's shocking how big they are. But if they start to fail, does this change the technocracy aspect? Patrick, maybe you can answer that. Does that change the technocracy system significantly so that it's not going to be worked out that way?
Whatever system they can get in place at this point, I think this is part of the bum's rush where they're racing to get to the gate to get as much stuff established before everything falls apart. If they have enough data centers implemented, and like X's big data center in Memphis, for instance, if they have enough of those types of AI plants running it up, that would give them the leverage to lock us down in scientific dictatorship. It seems to me that what they're focusing on right now is the establishment of a digital ID, establishment of alternative currency system like stable coins plus asset-based coins as well. And if they have enough horsepower in AI at that point, I don't think it'll matter if all of the other under construction plants just fold. At that point, there will be enough remaining AI horsepower in the country, probably the world, but at least in our country, to complete a capture of the whole country. So, you know, maybe that's the way they're thinking, but it seems to me that people like Sam Altman, and by the way, this guy's not a programmer. He never programmed a day in his life. He's a venture capital guy. But that says something right there about his personality and how he thinks. He's a venture capitalist, period. So he's parlayed OpenAI into the monster that it is right now with all its various products that is floating around. But in his mind, he wants to be the dominator of the whole field. Maybe he's just whistling Dixie, but you know, you can see it. You can see it in his eyes when he talks. Same thing with Jensen Huang at NVIDIA. Same thing with Mark Zuckerberg. All these people, they think, oh, we've got this covered. So at this point, if all of the AI that's under construction failed altogether, would there be enough AI online at that point to do the job for the technocrats, the way they see it happening?
Just what Elon has, 200,000 totally integrated, GPU systems.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's an astounding amount of processing power. That alone could probably run the beast system easily.
Yeah.
So the problem is it's not diversified. The risk mitigation is not strong there because you can put a tactical nuke there and take it out, So it's bad. I do think that technocrats play a role in bending the knee to the Antichrist. It's so clear to me that nation states don't do that necessarily like we would imagine it. I was listening to Todd Hampson and Jeff Kinley argue that they do believe that it's actually a national leader. But I think the way I think about it is that they're turning over the keys to their castle which is the encryption keys, the unlock, all the passwords, to take total control over Amazon, over Microsoft and Azure, over Oracle. These are the offerings, the way my mind is working right now, that will be given to the Antichrist on bended knee, handing a USB drive or some kind of mechanism over to the Antichrist. So I have a vivid imagination, but I do think it's the technocrats, because what the Antichrist doesn't do, according to scripture, is he doesn't go around building the beast system. I think it's going to be delivered to him.
Yes.
You know, during that act, that ceremony of fealty that they'll do on bended knee, because they're actually serving the dark interest of this world already, the principalities. They just may not realize it, or they may be unwilling accomplices. But you know,
when we consider this new philosophy called the Dark Enlightenment, I discuss this in our book a lot. In fact, we explain the whole thing. But this concept of the Dark Enlightenment is to create nation states based on the corporate model, where technocrats are running everything, like the CEO all the way down to the janitor. Technocrats running everything in society, dictating to everybody else what they will do or not do. They'll provide goods and services to them as they see fit. But you can see at that point, if this philosophy survives, you can see a network of sovereign corporations set up. Maybe, you know, I won't say Oracle has one or NVIDIA has one. I'm not going to say that necessarily. But the concept of sovereign corporations that own everything in society and they're run by technocrats, well, that's, to me, I can see the morphing into the 10 kingdoms at some point. This would be an apt description of 10 kingdoms at some point in the future. And we know that those the 10 kingdoms have been drawn out for years and years, decades, actually. I saw it even back in the 70s, where Henry Kissinger had a map of the world, and he had it all divvied up in 10 kingdoms. Well, okay, Henry Kissinger, you know, well, he's you know, we know where he is right now, but it's a dry heat, though, like Phoenix, Arizona. So.
Oh, wow. My dad knew Kissinger, actually.
Well, okay, but this has been kicking around for a long time. We all talk about the 10 kings and the kingdom. What would they be like? Will it be democracies? Will they be constitutional republics? Will they be monarchies or something like that? Well, this new philosophy called the Dark Enlightenment, it fits the bill to the T. And if it survives, like they wanted to do this in America, they say, well, we have to have a monarch. We want a monarch, like a king, to rule our country in America and set everything straight. No. We don't want to. We dealt with that in the revolution. Thank you very much. We got rid of the king that was trying to rule over us back then. But I see the future of the 10 kingdoms basically being sovereign corporations, like a sovereign corporation, run with an iron fist by a technocrat. Each of them.
So is it a race, Patrick, as to who's going to survive in this whole, as this thing rolls out?
Oh, I have no idea who they're planning on making the monarch in America, for instance. Well, we kind of know who they're thinking at this point is probably Trump, but I didn't say that, did I? Yeah, I did. But you know, he's kind of acting like a monarch at this point, even if he's not declared one. But this is the plan that these people are pitching to him. I'm sure of it. They're pumping him up and thinking, "Wow, you could be the guy now that just take over everything." Maybe
we made that offer to acquire Canada. So he's taking baby steps, you know.
And Greenland.
And Greenland. Yeah, he's
Greenland.
priming for this.
That goes back to the Club of Rome in the 1970s.
It does, yeah.
Indeed.
Well, it seems like there's what I was observing in Israel, it's like there's a reversal of certain things in the scripture. Like Babel was judged, but now you can buy AirPods that will translate things as people speak. It's a very weird world that we live in. And by the way, the US dollar, everybody in Israel could do the exchange rate right on the spot. So you don't need shekels or anything like that. Just take a few bucks with you, and they know exactly what it's worth on that day. So let me go to something else. So David Bowen, you had suggested some things, and I think some of the other guys had suggested some things about the deceptive nature of these AI chatbots. And then also, I think, I don't know who sent me, which one of you sent me something about a Glenn Beck discussion with somebody in the music industry or something about how people were trying to take him out. So, well, let's talk about that one first. The story was that, well, and this is related to some other things I'm reading, is that the concern in the scientific community now, as Financial Times, Wall Street Journal have covered this, that there's this massive amount of science papers, science research papers that are totally fraudulent with made up references and that type of thing. And then the case of the guy, Robbie Starbucks or somebody like that,
yeah,
who was trashed online, or there was like stuff made up about him by these AI bots that was completely false. He'd had inappropriate relationships with this woman, and he'd stolen money from this person. And then the question was, well, who do I go sue? Because it's like there's nobody there.
Defamation suit.
Yeah. So discuss that a little bit.
Yeah.
Dave,
so
maybe you, or Scott, you start, and then Dave.
I brought that up in the group that we talked about, but this is absolutely predicted to happen. If you are ingesting data into a large language model, it'll never leave it, you know? So the problem is this guy, someone brought to his attention that his political views put him on the opposite side of the accepted freedom of speech issue. And they decided to essentially sabotage his reputation and his character. And the information that got into Gemini, which is the LLM from Google, started to inform people that were asking about this gentleman, you know, tell me about this guy. And it would spew forth lies, and not even into, it would make up stories. It would make up links trying to deceive a listener on the other side of the chatbot that this guy was basically pure evil. Meanwhile, this guy hasn't done any of that. And he brought it to Google's attention for 2 years, and it wasn't fixed. And then he took action legally now. And I think Google's, you know, in pretty big problem right now financially, but they'll just buy this lawsuit off, and there'll be a non-disclosure on the terms of everything. But they are, by the way, they stopped doing it now. So they must have interceded somehow in the model. Just this last week, by the way, this has been going on for over 2 years. So I think that this raises this problem of how do we protest if there isn't an indication as to how dangerous the B system is. This is it. Who do you go to if the AI who's making decisions about buy, sell, or the policy enforcement, or whether or not you're doing the right thing, and it starts removing, you know, money and other things from your crypto wallet or whatever it is? How do you protest that, actually? And they hallucinate. It's a known problem. And this is extremely dangerous, but I don't know that this is going to stop anybody. I think this is going to be paid off, and the guy will be very wealthy, but they won't stop. They can't stop. The very nature of the training data that these large language models, the SOTAs, the state-of-the-art foundation systems, they're called, they are hoovering in and buying and acquiring data from all of the sources that are out there. Most of it is stuff we don't even know. When we accept a licensing agreement, I just watched a piece on smart TVs. They're collecting all kinds of data and they're selling it, brokering it. We all know this. It's just that it's conducted under the surface until it surfaces in a chatbot and people are listening to your story being misrepresented. And this is a very bad problem, not just from a technology point of view, but from a legal protection framework. You know, what was her name? Tina, what was the lady, Malgrim in the UK, Britt, right? That said, we need a digital rights, but they'll give it a lip service in a 10-second.
Yeah, Pippa Malmgren at the World Government Summit a couple of years ago.
That's what she said. We need a digital, Bill of Rights. Has it happened? No. Will it ever happen? No, it won't. So they give a bone to the press, but it's not actionable in real terms. So I'm bringing this up in this way for a reason. If this doesn't foreshadow how oppressive the beast system enforcement of the mark is, I don't know what does. It's just going to be a chokehold on humanity, unlike anything we've ever seen before in history.
Dave, why don't you share a couple things that you had brought up about chatbots and that type of thing?
Sure. Preparing for this, and one of the topics we talked about could have been chatbots. I wanted to kind of go into research and look at it, and I found a TikTok video that a mom was putting on air, and basically she was driving her 10-year-old son around, and he was speaking with Gronk. So he was as he's speaking with Gronk, he's asking about soccer. He's saying, what player is player A or player B better? And then Gronk was giving some pretty cruel answers to this little boy as he was trying to explain this. And the conversation, I'm not sure how it went that way, but eventually this AI asked the boy to send nudes. And when the mother heard that, the mother stopped, and she got out and she came back and this is what she put on TikTok. She actually went back and she started talking to the AI and said, okay, we just had this conversation, and it was interesting to see how she was interacting as if this thing was real. And then she said, you asked my son to send you nudes. He said, no, that's illegal. Maybe I said this. And she said, no, and then went back and finally admitted that. So when I saw that TikTok, which I sent to John, I went back and I went to ChatGPT and I asked it questions. I said, does the chatbot Gronk possess any dangers for children? And the first thing it came up with, it said, yes, it does. Inappropriate content. And it says data exposure, lack of privacy. It says it provides misinformation. This is AI talking about AI. It says it has emotional and psychological risks to it. I said, okay, I asked the next question. Does AI pose any dangers for children? It said, absolutely. Violent and disturbing content comes across there. There's deep fakes that they're using on children. There's misinformation, a manipulation that they like to do with children. Again, this is the chatbot talking about this, given this, talked about it, how it will hurt emotional development and impact children. And it says AI generates scams. AI generates deep fakes, voices of parents and friends to trick children, and it brings up identity risks. And it just went on and on and on. I said, well, what is the purpose of having a chat box then? It says just to be a friend. And then go a little bit deeper, Tim Berners-Lee, who invented the World Wide Web basically, and HTML and URL systems, he came out and said AI was supposed to do the boring work, allowing us to be more creative. But that's not how it's working out.
I think all of us have spoke on AI companions. I know, Britt, you and I are very, very public with our comments on it. OpenAI just, I believe in December, is releasing the ability for users to ask erotic basic
Yes.
questions and interact with. This is a large language model, a foundation platform with all these guardrails in it. But if you could prove age verification, which anybody could forge most likely, you get to go in there. And by the way, in terms of Grok, David, when I log into Grok, because I do it for some research, it's interesting that there's a tab on the main interface in where the companions are waiting for you. So you don't request the companions, they are presented to you if you click on that other tab. There's 3 of them as far as I know today. And 2 of the 3 actually have the capability or the training or permission to talk in intimate ways with a user. And millions of people are getting snared in this idea that this companion is real, that it understands you. Meanwhile, they're exploiting the situation. They're learning all about you. They're creating a digital, profile ledger about you, and they're selling it to the highest bidder. And it's just frightening.
It's just demonic.
It is total. The motive is completely demonic.
Yeah, and I would add, one of the worst things that we're seeing is the slew of AI afterlife products, especially AI generative ghost. So these are AI avatars that you can upload a deceased person's picture, voice tracks, diaries, articles they've written, and it will look and speak just like them.
Yeah.
And people are encountering these now at funerals. They'll go to a funeral, and the relatives of the deceased person at the funeral have created one of these avatars, and it starts speaking to the guests saying, "Thank you for coming to my funeral," talking with it. Again, this is...
If I saw that, I'd walk right out. There's no way I would do
this
that.
Is Deuteronomy 18 speaks specifically to this. The Lord says this is detestable. It's calling for spirits of the dead.
Yeah.
And again, we're seeing this is going to cause a lot of emotional and psychological problems for people that get wrapped up in this, addicted to these things. It's a slippery slope for people that think they're either honoring a loved one or they're just tempted, thinking that this is something they would enjoy. So we need to be warning everybody. The church needs to take the lead role in warning everybody about this. And then even if you don't seek these things out, again, imagine you walk into a funeral, you see one, or someone uploads one of these things on social media and you encounter it. So this could be, there's so many issues where this could really cause spiritual, psychological, and emotional harm to so many people. And we're already seeing millions of people going down this road. And again, as you guys mentioned, the AI companions, AI romantic relationships, this is going to destroy and ruin millions of lives. And we need to be warning every single person around us about the dangers involved with this.
Yeah, I did an article with AI talking with the dead, and it's called DAD-Bot, D-A-D bot, or Hereafter AI. And this one man says his dad died in 2017, but yet he talks to him every day. DAD-Bot or Hereafter AI.
So, the next precipitous cliff here is physical AI. And I'm thinking of the ability for the, glasses that have built-in, speakers and microphone and cameras, and or the robots that are just now emerging. They're wandering around your home with cameras in their eyes, and you'll interact with them, but now they have a physical presence, and there's supposed to be safeguards there, but they're actually being operated by unknown people in a call center real time right now. They're not completely autonomous yet. They're still training them. And if you buy one of these robots, which are $500 a month on lease or $20,000 one-time payment, whatever it is, you're basically agreeing to have a human operator, continuing to operate this thing remotely in your presence. I mean, if that doesn't make your skin crawl, I don't know what does,
Yeah. I don't know. Got two things I want to do. Scott, what you want me to play the clip of Jensen Huang?
I think what I'll do is I'll summarize it right here.
Okay,
guys.
that'd be good.
I just saw Jensen Huang's, again, his keynote in 2025 here. And for the first time, we heard all together, there is a form of convergence coming now between AI and quantum and 6G. And the way that he was speaking about it is the AI was needed for quantum error correction and stabilization of the qubits. And the 6G network was AI ready, and that Nokia, specifically one of the largest patent holders for 5G communications in the world, and Nokia is world renowned for their mobile communications platform, has the ability to adopt this technology that is being developed by NVIDIA to basically do real-time pushing updates down through all of their mobile stations all over the world, just like a normal software update and a reboot, and it's all there. It's not, no hardware has to change on it. And so I'm looking at this and I'm going, oh, wait a minute. Okay, so we knew, and by the way, I have another theory about the Starlink systems actually already having embedded 6G communication infrastructure in those satellites, because my rationale is, why would you spend at whatever the number of dollars per launch per satellite if you do not include the next wave of communication infrastructure, especially for IoT and total communication saturation through low Earth orbit. So I feel like either their existing satellites have it already, but it's not active yet, or that they're easily upgraded through a firmware update or something that will then enable that technology. So here we have global satellites. There's a rocket going up every 2 or 3 days. There's other, there's the AI development that's off the chain right now. And now you've got quantum computers, which finally have their primary use case now that they have stabilized the quantum qubits now to make it usable, actually, so that it's a predictable outcome. So I'm looking at this and my jaw kind of hit the ground. I'm open to you guys asking or commenting on if you're also seeing this as the last kind of piece in that puzzle of how the advanced technology that we see today will be used to exercise the mark.
I see 6G being that, yes.
But those base stations, David, aren't pervasive around the world. Those need antennas that are 6G capable, right? So I think they're just leaping over that stuff. They're not going to do a big deployment like that, I don't imagine. I think they'll do it through satellite.
At this point, 5G is unipolar. In other words, you're communicating with your cell phone, for instance. If this has 5G, it's forming a beam connected you to the pole wherever the thing is, or even a satellite for that matter. But it doesn't have the innate ability to spawn networks on its own without your permission. In other words, you send data like a text message, it just sends it to the person through the tower, and then there you go. 6G brings a new capability where the 6G network itself, using the hardware like in your phone, your car, whatever, that can spontaneously make networks, like local networks, of all the devices around you at the same time. So picture you're driving down the road and some Tesla's automobiles are to your left or right, whatever, and you have way stations, physical stations along the side of the road. All these devices can mesh together to create their own ad hoc network and then act as one. You're driving around the road, and that all this network is going to guide you based on everybody else's output or input as well to get you to your destination. Maybe a car will drop out, another one come in. Maybe a new way station will come in view, it'll come in, etc. This is a capability that they can't duplicate with 5G at this point. They can mimic it, but they can't duplicate it. This is the value at that point. Imagine if they wanted to make a contact tracing application that would tell when you get in contact with somebody who has COVID, for instance. They tried to do that during COVID. And there were some applications that kind of mimic that whole thing. Well, now all of a sudden, if you walk in a room of people and your 6G phone connects to all the people in the room to create a hive mind at that point with every device in the room, that's huge. That just think of the possibilities of control that you could have at that point if you can control that type of situation. So it will be a big thing, thing.
So, Patrick, that just triggered an interesting thought to me, which is, imagine you're in a room with 100 people in it, and you are the one without the mark, and the 99 others will be able to see that through the technology, and everyone is going to turn their head in your direction, and you'll be arrested immediately.
Yes, I could see a short story to that effect.
Scott, do you think that's something going there?
Oh, sorry. Something went. Must have been 6G.
There you go.
Over my phone.
Scott,
Nice try, John.
Do you think we reached the point of no return when we switched from narrow AI to general AI? Narrow AI just being more of it, just calculating things, focusing on one task, but AGI or general AI being able to have cognitive skills. Didn't we kind of cross the line at that point?
So I don't believe that AI is intelligent, first of all. So I believe it's competent in reasoning. But you'll hear that that AGI is a roadmap basically to where human is more competent than basically most humans, and super intelligence, which I think is a deception and a lie, is equal to smarter than anybody on the earth, So I think that that's a narrative by the enemy. I really believe that's a fear, uncertainty, and doubt principle that the enemy is leveraging for us. People talk about it all the time. Every time you use the word AI, you're literally saying that it's intelligent. And I just think it's one of the greatest deceptions in the world today. Again, something our forefathers probably could have never even imagined, but we get to see it happening. And I'll tell you that as a user of AI every single day, for a lot of the projects that I research and I'm coding, I use it for coding assistance right now. It's extremely powerful and very good, but there are mistakes, there's misunderstandings that goes off the rail. It literally it's not deterministic, which is the biggest problem you have. If you ask it, what is 2 + 2? it'll give you 4, but then 10 or 20 times later, it'll say, 8. So it just, you don't know what's really happening with the model weights inside of the thing and how it actually derives what the next predicted token should be. And that is a fatal flaw. And that's why you'll hear many people saying that the transformer architecture is not going to give us the kind of intelligence where AI can actually do more than just think and present what it has already been trained on. It doesn't do original language or science. You have other people that say that AI is doing what they call original science with new breakthroughs and everything. But to me, that is impossible. I think what's happening there is it's taking fragments of half-completed and or abandoned research and recombining it into testing iterative things where it finally unlocks and tests over and over and over again until it finds another combination. But that itself was based on other people's work and the training model. So even what they are calling original research, I think is deceptive.
It probably is. Yep.
Yeah, they say the goal to general AI, which I can't comprehend, is to get it to have emotions. Is that even possible?
No, it's a lie. It's a lie.
Yeah.
Let me say what Scott just said. That's the truth. I believe this as well. It's not intelligence at all. It's just a fake. But people who don't understand the first thing about what we're talking about at all, they get a hold of a chat bot. The chat bot convinces them that it's sentient. And all of a sudden, that person, I mean, who cares at that point? If a person thinks that their chatbot is sentient towards them, then they're into the matrix at that point. There's no hope for them at this point. There's a new term in the psychological lexicon called AI psychosis, where AI is twisting people into a psychotic position, a psychotic phenomena, where they have a break with reality. Part of that process is people can then say their AI is sentient, and you'll never convince them otherwise at that point. This is the danger at this point. Something fake is becoming something real to real people.
Yeah. And along those lines, so can AI show emotion? No, it doesn't have emotions, but it can project emotions. And it's already getting very good at manipulating people's emotions, recognizing emotional cues from people and using that to manipulate. And so it becomes extremely dangerous. It becomes a way of controlling people in a lot of ways.
Yeah, well, we probably ought to start to wrap this up. Maybe we just go around the table with some final thoughts. And again, this is one of those things where it's a little bit frustrating because we just barely scratched the surface. So let's go, David, Britt, Patrick, then Scott. And people like, share, subscribe, share on social media, help us out with the algorithms. We appreciate that. So, David?
Yeah, I mean, to wrap it up, one of the questions I had, really, I was thinking about Britt with this one because I've been really looking at the AI circular events and looking at the AI bubble, what's happening, and doing some research. I know in 2008, we had $16 trillion lost in household income. We had 10 million families lose their homes. We had unemployment at 10%. And that was in 2008. When the pandemic came, unemployment went to 14.7%. So, Britt, no one knows the future, but I think you can have some educated speculation because I think you're an expert in this. But what comes next with where we're at? And more importantly, what do people do? How do we help prepare people?
Well, in my personal opinion, I think we're looking at a severe global depression on par with what we saw during the Great Depression. I don't think that it's going to last as long as the Great Depression. We're not looking at a decade of depression. Maybe as little as 12 to 18 months. But the central bank and government response to that is going to be to push people into this digital system, but also to gift currency to them as part of that process, which very well could lead to hyperinflation. That could be a way to get people into that system as well, depending on how that all plays out. But people need to be preparing themselves and being as resilient as possible if we're to be a part of that. And that doesn't always mean that you have to have a lot of cash to be able to acquire objects. Being connected to other people is often in a societal breakdown scenario or hyperinflations, these severe economic depressions in the past. Being connected to people you can trust and having skills to be able to serve other people so they can serve you, that's what's worked out best for people. And then, of course, put your trust in the Lord. If you know the Lord, then nothing the world throws our way can derail us. So build your house on the solid rock of Jesus Christ, and be prepared to tell those who have built their lives on the shifting sands of this world why you have the hope you have in Jesus Christ, because they're going to see the peace that you have that others don't have in the midst of all of this chaos. So we need to be reading the Bible every day. We need to be in prayer, and we need to be connecting with our church family and just making ourselves as resilient as possible and looking for opportunities to share the gospel in the middle of all of this.
Thanks, brother.
Patrick?
You're muted, Patrick. There
I
you go.
think
Yeah,
you're muted.
there we go. There we go. Well, I've said this before. I suppose if you wake up on any given day, the first thing probably that you could put in your mind as you talk to the Lord, good morning, Lord, is the purpose in your mind. If this would be the day where you have to leave all your possessions behind and walk down the road in any direction, doesn't matter, and give it all up, if the Lord told you to do that or necessitate that you do that, that gives you a mental stability for as long as you own anything, whatever the possessions you might have, doesn't matter. But if the time to divorce yourself from those assets, from those things, is now. You still have them in your possession, but there may be a time in the future where you have to walk. Say, I'm out here for whatever reason. I'm going to walk down the road. I'm going to serve the Lord some of the capacity. This is how life was lived in the New Testament day. Paul, Peter, all these people, they never knew where the next meal was going to come from some point, and they didn't know if they didn't carry suitcases like we do. they had the clothes on their back mostly, and they did just fine for serving the Lord. That's one thing. Divorce yourself now for the physical things, even though you possess them for a period of time. Don't hold on to them tightly. Number one, you need to commit to be an ambassador, like Paul said. He was an ambassador in chains for Christ. This is a mental game that you play when you say, well, I'm just not going to survive, not just going to take care of my family, but I want to be an ambassador to the people around me, wherever I might be in contact with people. When you declare that you're an ambassador for Christ, that puts a responsibility on you to represent him correctly to the world and the kingdom of the world. That's not shouldn't be a hard thing for a Christian to do, but a role as an ambassador is to protect people that we run across in the world that might be in trouble. Somebody in the world, a Christian in the world, gets crosswise of the world. You might be in a position to help them, maybe build an embassy around them, if you will, to give some protection. But you also have the responsibility to elucidate the world about the kingdom of God, not the kingdom of the world. They're separate entities. The kingdom of God is a different animal. Well, that's not right way to say it, but it's different from the kingdom of the world. This is the message that needs to be got spread around the world, the church especially, if you will, because nobody's telling people at this point, well, wait, you're not representing the kingdom of God correctly to the people in the world. And so how's that going to work out for you as a Christian? Not very well. I have to say, now's the time to steel your mind, to commit to be an ambassador for Christ. If you don't understand what I'm saying, pray about it. Ask him, how can I be an ambassador for you, Lord? And then commit yourself to it, whatever it takes you to do.
Yeah, well said, all of you guys. I'm going to continue to bring up something that I think I'm very passionate about. This it occurred spontaneously when I was talking with Lee Brainerd a couple years ago, but I think that the Watchman community has been equipped and planted in churches and in our little sphere of influence that we have. And I think that what we should do is understand the purpose of why we have all the knowledge. We've paid a terrible price for what we learn, and we are shunned and ostracized. No one looks at us in our eyes anymore. People avoid us. But I do believe that as things begin to break, and we've heard several examples of how that could be financially or politically or militarily, whatever that could look like. Just know that the elites will have their way. They will break everything so that they can construct it in their own image. We know that's going to happen. So I think my word of encouragement here is don't disengage as a watchman or watchwoman right now. It is so critical that you stay up to speed as best as you can, because when it starts happening, people are going to mill around inside your congregation or in your work area or whatever your influence is there, and they are going to be insane. They are not going to understand what is happening. And you have been equipped to know, actually. I think a lot of watchmen and watchwomen know. They know a lot. And so what I would ask you to do, as Patrick has said, you need to think about this now, is I would ask you to think about how would you present what's happening now in order to help a brother or a sister or a stranger. And I think that our moment is coming where we do not get ridiculed or mocked or shunned anymore. I think people will absolutely listen to every word that you have to say. And I know this sounds idealistic, but in my heart, in my thinking, in my experience of what I see in the world today, I think that this is coming. It's not to puff up the watchman. By all means, that's not what I'm saying at all. It's just saying that I hear over and over again from people that they feel like they've been marginalized, they're irrelevant, their pastoral staff never listens to them, right? That happens. And so I think that there's a time coming in which that is going to change. You'll get the call from your pastor or text message. You'll get people reaching out. Hey, I remember you talked about this. Is that what's going on? And then there's your opportunity to share the gospel, to make sure that they're on the rock of Jesus. Like Patrick has said, they're not on shifting sand, as Britt has said, that there's this opportunity to be missional in a way in which we have probably never seen. I'm not talking about a revival worldwide. I'm talking about the increase of our ability to help people and to love them into the truth. People will ask you to connect the dots for them. And you won't have to, back up the dump truck and dump it on them all the time, like I do today. And my wife still kicks me underneath the table all the time. So I just think from an encouragement point of view, let's prepare now. Let's communicate to the Lord in our prayer life, in our Bible studies, that we're willing. Generally, that's all we need to do. Lord, I'm willing when you call me up for duty more visibly with our pastors and our churches and our congregation to help be part of that solution, to love people into the truth and to dispel the deceptions that are coming.
Okay, thanks, guys. So I want to say a couple things. First, I want to thank the moderators that are helping us out to moderate in the chat. It's a big burden off of us not to have to watch that. We'll do this again, I don't know, maybe a month or so. And I think we were talking among ourselves. I think the next time we're going to try to spend half the time on questions. So maybe you can, I know on fellowship, fbchapel.com, there's a link for email. You can send questions in to me or elsewhere. There's different avenues, and we'll try to curate those questions so we can break them down into a sizable thing. I also want to say I just really appreciate the guys that joined us tonight: Patrick, Britt, David, and Scott, and also Pete and Tom, who join us from time to time. I really appreciate these guys. You have no idea how this could be very, very stressful, but this never turned out to be that way. I mean, because even though we disagree on some things, we're brothers in Christ, and we're pulling the oar in the same direction. So I would just encourage you to follow these guys on their platforms, because they address these issues sometimes a little more detail than we can in a group setting like this. And please, I think a theme that I heard in the sum up comments tonight is, do not be a lone ranger. Do not forsake the assembling of yourselves together, because we are entering an incredibly difficult period of human history. I want you to know, I'm not fearful, but I understand what's going on and what's coming. And I think what we're doing here is we're trying to help people sort through some of those issues so we don't have that spirit of fear and we can be informed. So again, guys, thanks a lot. Everybody, thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, and we will see you the next time. Guys, hang on, and I'll say goodbye to you on the other side. Thanks, everybody.